All right, welcome back. Hope your week was great. It's been bitterly cold here. Now we got like a 14, whatever, 20-inch snow out there. A lot of shoveling. But I move firewood too. I live up in the North Country of New Hampshire. We're doing habits of highly of highly effective impressionists. You know, I take that I've mentioned before from this book, Habits of Highly Effective People, I think it's called. There's some number of habits. And I wrote down at first, I wrote offering you 27 habits. And it turns out I went to more work at it, turning into 47 or some crazy number like that. Well, I'm trying to, just sort of as a thank you for the level we've been reaching here with all these subscribers, is I'm trying to give you guys a series, and I've never done anything like this before, but instead of hitting and running on these things, we're just touching on them as we go, which is really the way most painters, all painters I've studied with, I've never worked with anybody who's systematic in these kinds of areas, and it's very difficult to be systematic and just talk about habits and mindsets. Most people are just coming up to you when you're working and they're saying you got to make this more like that, more like that. And you start learning these to behave this way. But I thought it might be useful just to put out the idea of the things that go through your mind and that I find must routinely be sort of controlling your mind, if you want to put it that way. These titles, like general procedures, I have no particular fancy for the headings, the topic headings, if you want to call it that. I could have called them 10 other things. I could have called them all the same thing. I could have just called it part 1, 2, and 3, but here we are, number 7, general procedures. So let's jump into it and see what we got. This is something I mentioned in the last one, and but these are really on the street behaviors. These are when you're sitting there looking at the stuff evolving on your canvas, or as you're trying to make things. These are things that you're going to be wanting to do. So last week I mentioned looking 4 times before making a mark. Now that's a routine that you go through, and you say you're doing it to yourself. You lie a lot. So you say you're looking 4 times, but you're not. You're just looking until you think you have some sort of a vague idea, right? And I don't even know how many people have the ability to say what the idea is they have, and that's a big problem. So if you want to go up there and be effective, you want to look 4 times, which means that you should look, and when you think you're ready to go up and make a mark, you should pause and go up and look. You should go back and look again. Okay. And you should do that over and over. Make yourself. I remember when I was jumping out of my skin practically the first few times when I was really trying to move. I was just doing charcoal drawing. But I was remembering this comment by Paxton. Look 4 times before making a mark. And so I remember just having this unbelievable urge to grab that charcoal. The charcoal in my hand is just to run to the canvas and start making it the mess I always made. Remember, a lot of this is coming out of frustration from my failures to get a good likeness in front of me, to be having lots, by the time you get a half hour into the picture, having so many things, more things wrong than right, so to speak. And that's a thing that Schmid mentions. I really did appreciate that parallel. Anybody looking for truth in front of him is going to run into that. If you care about what's happening in front of you, that's when it's going to really hit you. So. But finally, I said, you know what? I'm going to put the charcoal down, and I'm not going to allow myself to pick it up until I've looked 4 times. And that got me to really slow down. I just, by the way, happened to be reading a story about some people, a preacher who had suffered, Richard Wurmbrand, who'd suffered in Romanian communist prisons, brutally suffered, and it was in solitary confinement for like 3 years. And he, to avoid going crazy, he would take a verse of scripture that he knew, and he would create a sermon, and then he would preach it to himself. That's what he would do. That would be the course of his work for that day. So he's a pastor. It makes sense, right? But he's running out of scriptures, and he finally decided, well, how about we just he said he started with, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness lay over there, whatever the whole verse is. And he said, and so I looked at that verse and I said, in. He said, I said, in. And how much meaning is there in the word in? And so that was one of those things that these things happen in life, right? If you're reading things you're running into, if you're in the search for truth of any kind, of all kinds, you're going to start finding these amazing parallels. So I did find that, though, that I slowed down and I started really actually seeing what I was seeing. So looking 4 times before making a mark, big deal, okay? And let things dawn on you. Give them time to sink in, so you can begin to say, "Oh, I'm beginning to see what you mean over there." And then still don't run at it. Let it sink in deeper. Let yourself become more aware of what you're seeing. Okay. Okay. Debriefing. And by the way, I don't think that's simply limited to us as impressionists, but that's the primary thing. It is limited to anybody who's just trying to paint from life. So I'll stop backing away from that. It really is. It's what you're trying to draw, before making a mark. This is what you're trying to draw, something you see in front of you. Debriefing after each sally. So you run up there, you make that mark finally. Do you walk back to where you're positioned on the floor, where if you're working like us, there's always this fixed position, a certain distance from the model in every way fixed so that you're painting the same thing every time. And do you look at your canvas and see and actually ask your left brain, so let your left brain into the game at that point, and let yourself grasp what you're doing, what you just do. Is called debriefing. What I just do, because it might need to be better right now. Don't get yourself into the idea that it has to be perfect right now. But it might be totally obvious. You're totally off. And you say you're trying to do a particular thing and it has the angles totally a particular shape, and the angle is just wildly off. You can correct that. So, but come back and take care of that, because you're trying to put this note down for a useful reason. It's going to be useful in all sorts of different areas of the painting. It's going to be related to different areas. But do come back, and no matter what relationship even you're trying to correct, once you put two things in there, come back and debrief and remind yourself of those things, and ask yourself, did I accomplish what I went out there to do? Okay. Don't just look back and forth and make marks mindlessly back and forth and living in a hopeful place. I mentioned that in one of the previous ones. Now, when adjusting your work, work exclusively as you can on the thing least like and stay with it till it's improved. Okay? Now, if you're not watching the whole, as we talked about in the last one, if you're not watching the whole, and we'll talk about this forever, you won't know what the thing least like is, because the thing least like, by definition, is the thing least like in relation to the general impression. No, it's going to be some spot. There's going to be some area that just draws your attention, and then you have to sit there and say, what is it about that that's not like? And you'll notice that it's usually in only one, sometimes two little areas of the thing. So it might be off in value, and it might be off in chroma, but it isn't off in location. You see what I mean? Or it isn't off in other categories, and all these categories apply to everything. So then your job, though, is to then you go up there and say, oh, the thing that's least like is the edge quality of this thing that's just jumping at me. It's a fuzzy edge, and it just sinks into the canvas. And so that creates a hole over there, and it's drawing my attention. Oh, it's the edge. Oh, get a concept of it, walk up there, get a really good concept, look 4 times, and then walk up there and on your canvas and attempt to articulate. And make sure you look at your canvas while you're standing there. Make it do what you think it ought to have done. Then come back and look at it again to the whole. Okay? And stick with it until it actually is a solved problem. Now, it doesn't have to be true in that some way. It's got to be right. Don't be doing that. It's got to be taken out of the category of the least like. That's all you're trying to do. Okay? Better not say more. Improved. You don't want to get fixated in making it perfect. You want to be over there and making it not the backstraggler anymore. Okay? And being tentative, now this is a big deal, being tentative for the search, right? And that's what I was saying. So totally, it probably is the same thing, as I possibly could have eliminated that and put this in the previous one, or brought that other one over into here. But being tentative is a word that Benson uses, being tentative. So you put a mark down, but you know you're going to probably move it. You're going to put a mark down, but you know you're going to adjust it in color, right? So being tentative, make that adjustment in a tentative way, and then make it more effectively, and then get out of there. Okay, but think tentative. Think you're making marks. It's like speculation. It's like projection in the sense of putting out an idea that you're going to make adjustments to. Okay, and this is what the next point is making. You're always proposing and adjusting. So you mix a note. You don't have to sit there and struggle to get this perfect note on your palette. You need to get that note to be plausibly where you think it should be. Then you need to walk up there and say, let's boldly just stick it there. Right? This is just a color value question, right? Just stick it there. And immediately, then come back and do this adjusting. You know it's going to be adjusting, so get it up there. And then into this wet puddle, you're going to say, oh, it should have been lighter, and you're going to adjust it. If And you're going to just, with whatever you need, if you look down there and you see the thing that will adjust it best is a yellow, you'll use that if it's the light, you know, in that light category. And otherwise it may be a white. But in any case, your problem is to propose a note and then go down there and adjust it. Don't feel like there's something like you got to sit there and labor over making the perfect note. Now make it as like as you can. And then make it more like right there in that minute. Don't leave some crap note up there that you're going to get to when you've made about 40 other crappy notes. Okay. All right. Now correlating, tying in every new mark. Now you see how these things are all one after the other after the other. So, but this is now whatever you adjusted. Like for example, I was talking about that back straggler being a sharp edge. You're putting this thing down there. You're cleaning up the edge, but you have to actually frequently you'll be working on a dry canvas. So if you make that better, you can't have it all tearing apart your unity, your paint surface unity. So you'll have to tie it in, okay? And there'll be a certain amount of work to all these things. Now, if you're working on 3 or 4 different places, you're trying to get them right in relation, you don't have to tie them all in yet, right? And some of the tying in is more or less cursory. If it doesn't look like it needs to be tied in, it adequately engages the surface so that it doesn't feel like that. That's fine. Don't be too fine about all those things. All right. Now, let's see, is that it for today? Or is there a whole, I think, I've tried to limit it. I've been a pretty good lad. Here I am doing, what is that, 12 minutes? Wow. You should be impressed, Mr. Producer. He was asking me to do 10-minute videos. So, all right, the next one's going to be problem solving. But for today, enjoy that. As I said, let these all sort of trickle into your consciousness and wonder about them, and more than anything, wonder about the larger thing we're talking about that would make you even think these things or work this way. I'm betting that most of you already have lots of this sort of in your head, all you guys who love painting from life. So I'm not betting it. I'm introducing you to anything. But I am suggesting that there's this whole body, they're all best ways of thinking, these habits. And if you can find better habits than the ones you've got now, find ones that address things you may not have even learned yet, you know, how to address a thing. Some of it just has to do with the progress of a painting. Some of it has to do with how to make angles better or whatever it is. But the whole process here that we're talking about is impressionist mindset stuff. And if you're playing basketball, you will find that there are best practices, that there are habits that you learn. And they become so second nature. You know you're doing it. If somebody asked you what you're doing, you could actually do what I'm doing and tell them why. But they're so second nature, you just perform them and move on, doing all these routine things. You make an adjustment, you stand back and debrief, you correct it to the degree it needs to be corrected, you check it to the hole, and you get out of there and look for the next back straggler. You tie it on, get out of there. These become our routine, okay? All right, I'm talking about habits of highly effective, impressionists. So, yeah, help yourself to become the best you can be, and if this helps, I'm very pleased. The last thing I want to do is have this be something where you think you must do this, and you must do that, and you must do this, because it'll take the joy out of doing this. Even in that thing of 7 or 5 habits of highly effective people, I remember reading that and thinking, I'm never going to put this to work. It was interesting reading about it, but I'm never going to put this to work. I don't think you really have to put it to work. You have to notice, though, that your body, you're already living in habits. And this is suggesting to you a sort of a body of habits. And you should be aware of your body of habits, and just being aware of these ones I'm talking about may create a change in you unconsciously even, that you'll just suddenly find yourself shifting gradually more and more to being, for example, just more relational or more objective and those sorts of things. So I'm just trying to introduce you to aspects of the stuff that makes you successful in making a painting from life, making a rendering from life. Simple as that. We're not trying to be complicated. We're not trying to make art, any of those things. All right. So now I've made it go long. All right. see you in the next one. So much for that, Mr. Producer. All right. Have a good week of it, guys.